The nation of India, largest so-called democracy in the world, is a place of great hostility and discrimination toward Christians, and it is growing ever more severe. In fact, during my time at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, we recommended that India be identified as a country of particular concern. That is yet to happen. That would give tools to the federal government to sanction India for their hostility or indifference toward religious freedom. And in particular, what the evidence suggests is that they're turning a blind eye to the attack and to the abuse and discrimination toward Christians and other religious minorities. FRC has released a new issue brief examining this violence and discriminations that Christians in India are facing. And here to share more is FRC's Arielle Del Turco, who is our director for the Center for Religious Liberty. Arielle, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony.
All right, so let's talk about how frequent and common these attacks of violence have become in India toward Christians.
You know, we don't hear about it that often, but attacks against Christians are shockingly frequent. Just last week, we saw there was a church where 200 people, a mob of 200 people, came, interrupted a worship service, beat people with iron rods simply because they were attending a Christian worship service in their community. And when the police showed up, they didn't show up to protect the Christians necessarily. They showed up, they took the pastor in for questioning, and they asked him if he was responsible for forced conversions of all things. There was no basis for this. They were believing the mob over the Christian citizens who were attacked simply for worshiping their God. So we're looking at not only a situation where there's a lot of violence and Christians face uncertainty and attacks, but the police are at worst complicit and at best completely turning a blind eye to Christian suffering.
Yeah, that's where we see that happening a lot in some countries like Nigeria and others, where it's not necessarily at the hands of government that we see this systematic persecution of religious minorities, Christians in particular, but they're just turning away, allowing the mobs, as you pointed out, to carry this out with impunity. Now, there's something coming up. There's reports coming up March the 1st that there is going to be an all-out attack. Hindu extremists in the nation have called for a day of mob violence targeting Christians, accusing them of being cow slaughterers. Now, this is yet another painful reminder that though India claims to be the world's largest democracy, many of its policies reinforce the perception that the nation has succumbed to this Hindu nationalism that is worsening into extremism. Talk a little bit about this and how we as Christians here in the United States can be responding to this threat for March the 1st.
Yeah, this is very scary. So a few viral videos went around social media in India where Hindu leaders were calling on their followers to physically attack Christians on this specific day. When we hear the term cow slaughterers, we think that's a very weird insult, but they hold cows as sacred in Hinduism. And so they sometimes falsely accuse Christians of eating beef in India. And so they're trying to foment this violence on this one concentrated time. And Christians in India are very frightened. So they would really appreciate our prayers. We've heard from Indians who have reached out asking for prayers, asking for awareness on this issue. And this is really a symptom of some of the Hindu nationalism that is growing rampant in India. Over the last several years, India went from a country that was number 32 on the most dangerous list of places to be a Christian, according to Open Doors. Now they're number 11. So we've seen a serious spike in safety for Christians in India over the last decade or so.
So let me ask you, Arielle, Prime Minister Modi, is he helping or is he hurting? Where does he stand on this?
he has largely been entirely silent on violence against Christians, and partially it's because some of his supporters, not all, but there's a section of his supporters that are fomenting this type of violence. So it's not politically advantageous for him, who he's a part of a Hindu nationalist movement, to really be speaking out against this. But we live in unprecedented times with President Trump really having a bit of an unpredictable foreign policy, but he has a good relationship with Modi, and I think he has a chance here to call India out, to call up Prime Minister Modi and ask him to protect Christians. And we're coming up against March 1st. This would be a good time to do that.
All right. Arielle, thanks so much for joining us. Great work.